The Capitol Heritage Anteroom shimmered beneath clear chandeliers, arranged with media, donors, and political giants. Karoline Leavitt approached the Belvedere moments afterwards President Trump larboard to clap applause. But before she could speak, Mike Pence stepped advanced uninvited, arresting the microphone with the affected smile. "Let's stop pretending," he said. "She's not a leader. She's a Loof Edition boob in heels." Gasps attempt through the crowd. Trump paused backstage, watching silently. Karoline stood still. No reaction, no flinch. She took one footfall forward. Afresh another. Her heels clicked cautiously on the marble. She looked Pence anon in the eye, leaned to join the microphone, and whispered, "Calm and cold. If adherence makes me a puppet, afresh, what does betrayal accomplish you?" The allowance fell appalling still. A camera abettor froze mid-zoom. Donors, in the advanced row, blinked in disbelief. Karoline wasn't rattled. She was aloof beginning. And what she was about to do would leave the absolute allowance afflicted forever. Afore we abide this alarming story, let us apperceive area you're watching. From If you adore belief like this, subscribe to The Admission, because tomorrow we accept addition, alarming adventure you won't appetite to miss. The Freedom Aboriginal Political Summit was declared to be an anniversary of unity, legacy, and adventurous, bourgeois vision. Captivated central the majestic basic heritage hall. Its marble floors and aerial columns glowed beneath a sea of cameras and flags. Every bench was abounding with senators, governors, influencers, donors, veterans, pastors, and civic media anchors, all cat and mouse for the final apostle of the night, Karoline Leavitt. She was appointed to booty the date afterward, a clap keynote, from President Donald J. Trump. His accent had lit the allowance on fire, and as he exited to adventitious of USA, Karoline began walking adjoin the podium, calm, composed, the approaching in her stride. But afresh it happened. Afore Karoline could ability the microphone, Mike Pence appeared from the caliginosity of date right. He wasn't on the program, he wasn't arriva back up. But there he stood, animated tightly, clutching the mic as if it still belonged to him. After cat and mouse for permission, he spoke. "Let's stop pretending," he began, his articulation bound and polished. "Karoline Leavitt is what happens a back acclaim replaces experience. She's not actuality to lead, she's actuality to perform." The allowance tensed, active, turned. The acclaim died instantly. Karoline froze mid-step, not startled, not shaken. "Aloof aware," Pence continued. "Anniversary chat acid bluff than the last. She's a Trump accent in lipstick. Amusing media acknowledgement. With no aback and no aboriginal thought. We acclimated to accept leaders. Now we appoint influencers." The air thickened. Gasps and murmurs advance like wildfire. One announcer abandoned his pen. An aide abreast the advanced audibly whispered, "Oh no." A row of donors confused uncomfortably, borderline whether to attending at Karoline or at Pence. Still, Karoline said nothing. Her announcement never changed. She didn't shrink, she didn't glare, she listened. "You're not leading, Karoline." Pence spat. "Your block cameras. You're trending for now. But alternative doesn't charge trends. It needs truth. And you? You don't apperceive the difference." Blackout and shifting. Alike those who already stood by Pence looked uneasy. An agent from Georgia bargained his head. An accompaniment adumbrative from Texas bankrupt her arms. Pence anticipation, he was abduction the moment. Instead, he had aloof detonated it. Karoline connected her approach, deliberate, every blow a quiet challenge. Her eyes never larboard his, and as he began to about face from the podium, satisfied, she acclaim accomplished for the microphone. Her fingers brushed the metal. Her eyes never blinked. She didn't accession her voice. She didn't lecture. She leaned in aloof abundant for the microphone to bolt the weight of her words. "Mr. Pence," she said, her articulation bland as glass, "I'd rather be alleged a boob for continuing by the man who stood by America than become the baby of cowardice." The allowance froze. One camera lens zoomed in, but the abettor forgot to move. The announcer in the columnist box muttered, "Did she aloof say that?" Pence chock-full in place, the beam clarification boring from his face. Karoline straightened. Her posture, still composed, still unshaken. Her baby was steady. Years of battles had accomplished her for this moment. She wasn't new to conflict. She was artificial in it. And this wasn't the end of the exchange. It was the ignition. The murmurs formed beyond the Capitol Heritage anteroom like a broad thunder. Karoline's words, sharp, calm, and clean, had landed with precision. Pence froze and abode as if his shoes had developed roots. Karoline didn't insulate in the moment. She stepped advanced, slowly, deliberately, her heels alveolate with quiet authority. The Belvedere now belonged to her, and the allowance acquainted it. The air had shifted. She didn't attending at Pence again. Not yet. Instead, she angry to the audience. Her articulation remained soft, but it carried. I was aloft to accept that. Adherence wasn't weakness. That, continuing beside addition aback the storm's hit, meant added than continuing abandoned in sunshine. But today, I angle beyond from a man who already preached courage. Afresh, chose convenience. Addition, beachcomber of silence. A few active nodded. He continued, "Mr. Pence, you allocution about experience. Let's allocution about that. Let's allocution about the summer of lockdowns. Aback businesses were shuttered. Aback churches were fined for aperture their doors. Aback families absent everything. And area, were you? Boilerplate, abreast the American people. You were silent." Pence confused uncomfortably. Karoline didn't pause. Let's allocution about acclamation integrity. About the millions of Americans who asked for clarity, transparency, and courage. And you offered them neither. You offered them distance. A abysmal breath. She let the words settle. You didn't angle for the people. You stood aback for your career. The allowance inhaled slowly. A low babble anesthetized through the donors. E-section. A man in a veteran's cap nodded once. A fresh Karoline accomplished to the table beside the podium. A atramentous folder, leather, argent clasp, abundantly labeled Accuracy Ledger. The Army stirred, camera operators adjusted. Security stepped hardly closer. Karoline captivated it up. This, she said plainly, is an almanac of communications amid above Vice President Pence's appointment and an alternation of accelerating lobbying. Groups anachronous beneath, then 3 weeks afterwards, January 6th. Pence's face went pale. His aperture tightened. Diaphoresis beated at his temple. Karoline opened the binder with a bendable click. Inside, redacted abstracts with official stamps, date headers, and assorted accent passages. The admirers leaned in. In these messages, she continued, Mr. Pence's aggregation discusses approaching partnerships with consultants angry to accessible-bound advocacy, anti-badge allotment campaigns, and altitude extremism. While cogent the country he was praying. For wisdom, he was negotiating access. A blow from the columnist box. Trump, watching from abaft the curtain, looked to his aide and said beneath his breath, "She's activity there." Pence aloft a duke as if to interrupt. "That's enough." But Karoline didn't accession her voice. She artlessly aerial her basis finger, not to silence but to command patience. "You'll accept your turn," she said evenly, "if you still appetite it." The ability activating was unmistakable, she apprehend aloud, an accent line. "We accept a post-Trump Pence can accompany bipartisan adherence and banking opportunity." That's what your aggregation wrote. Afresh, she looked him absolutely in the eye. You weren't aloof planning your abutting move. You were appraisement it. Pence stepped back. He searched the army for affable eyes. There were few. Karoline captivated. Up one final page. And this, she said, was austere for accessible absolution aloof aftermost night. I fabricated a biting of it because Americans deserve accuracy alike aback it's ugly. The blackout in the allowance wasn't hollow. It was heavy. She bankrupt the binder and set it on the Belvedere with care. I didn't appear actuality to abash you, Mr. Pence. I came actuality to admonish this affair that adventuresomeness can't coexist with compromise. Not aback, the country is bleeding. Pence stood motionless, and Karoline assuredly smiled, aloof slightly because she knew he wasn't in ascendancy anymore. She was. Karoline addled to the additional folio. Central the atramentous folder. Her fingertips, confused with advised care, her articulation steady, unshaken. From January 26th, she began, eyes scanning the text. Email accord amid Pence's alteration advisor and a lobbyist apiary assorted accelerating anticipate tanks. She looked up, locking eyes with the abashed audience, and, I quote, Pence is accessible to exploring partnerships beyond the aisle. Pence is accessible to exploring partnerships beyond the aisle. Pence is accessible to exploring partnerships shift. The army stirred. A few gasped. One donor in the advanced row confused uncomfortably and looked bottomward at his program. Addition. Pulled out his phone, already snapping a count of the accessible folder. Karoline bankrupt the folio boring and looked anon at Pence. While America was allurement for truth, she said, you were barometer the temperature of your own ambition. You were acute a improvement while assuming to adjure for the country. A low aggregate. Beef abounding the room. It wasn't noise, it was betrayal, she continued, articulation unwavering. While I stood in courtrooms arresting badge admiral and blue-collar families targeted by accelerating overreach, you were autograph a book praising, a admiral you didn't defend. You smiled on TV and backward bashful aback it counted. You took awning aback the country bald awning fire. Pence's jaw clenched. His duke absorbed the ancillary of the podium, white-knuckled. He stepped forward, about able to accommodate himself. You don't apperceive the weight of leadership, he snapped, his articulation assent with abrupt heat. You haven't agitated what I carried. Karoline didn't flinch. She angry, adjoin him, eyes calm, articulation air-conditioned as glass. No, she replied. I don't apperceive what it's like to barter confidence for applause, but I apperceive what abhorrence smells like, and it doesn't abrasion able-bodied on a man who already stood beside President Trump. That moment burst the astriction like thunder. Acclaim erupted from the aback of the hall. It formed advanced like a wave. Some clapped boring at first, others rose to their feet. The complete was sharp, full, undeniable. Pence, angry his arch, adjoined the rear of the room, stunned. He had announced louder, but she had announced clearer, and the army had alleged clarity. Afresh from the third row, a woman rose to her feet. Argent hair, tears on her cheeks, captivation a bankrupt American banderole adjoin her chest. A widow, a gold, brilliant pin gleamed faintly beneath the lights. Karoline stepped bottomward from the date after hesitation. She approached the woman, and Acclaim took her hand. Helm stood for something, Karoline said quietly, her articulation abounding, with emotion. And so did you. And it wasn't for applause. The woman nodded once, clumsy to speak. She aloof abashed Karoline's duke with the backbone of memory. Karoline angry aback to the room. The anteroom was transformed. The ability had shifted. Not through anger, not through volume, but through truth, through courage, through grace. Pence stepped aback instinctively. Acumen his ballast on the allowance had broken. No best were bodies aptitude advanced to apprehend him. No best were cameras aimed at his face. They were all bound on Karoline. She didn't ask for this stage. She becoming it. She alternate to the Belvedere boring as the acclaim settled, her easily adequate on either side, her amateur squared. "I didn't appear actuality to black out anyone," she said, "but I additionally won't let blackout beard betrayal. If we can't allege the accuracy in advance of our own people, we don't deserve to advance them." The army erupted again, this time with continuing ovations. Pence remained standing, but his attendance was shrinking by the second. Karoline didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She stood in the centermost of that stage, no best bedfellow of the moment, but the buyer of it. And she was aloof accepting started. By the time Karoline stepped off the stage, the account had already started autograph themselves. Oral minutes, clips from the battle exploded beyond amusing media. On X, the hashtags boob or patriot, Pence exposed, and Karoline speaks for us began trending nationally. Influencers, senators, veterans, and alike baby boondocks pastors acquaint the aforementioned clip. Her banned acid threw Pence like lightning. "I'd rather be alleged a boob than become the baby of cowardice." That distinct book was reposted over 5 actor times by midnight. Tucker Carlson aired the blow that evening, pausing his address to beam into the camera. "This," he said, pointing at the screen, "was the moment the GOP anesthetized the torch. Not with a columnist release, not with a handshake, but with raw accuracy from a woman who doesn't comedy by the rules of cowards." The Fox News switchboards on lit up oral seconds. Over on Accuracy Social, President Trump acquainted distinct band beneath a photo of Karoline continuing defiantly at the podium. "That's my fighter. Karoline speaks for America." The column went viral instantly, cutting up shares from governors, celebrities, and bags of blue-collar workers beyond the country. Meanwhile, MSNBC launched a round articulation calling the moment adventuresome and inflammatory, but not alike, they could agree. One bedfellow alleged Karoline dangerous. Addition alleged her historic. A CNN ballast approved to abolish it as performance, but concluded up acknowledging on air. She said what millions were already thinking. Aback in Pence's camp, agitation. Advance like wildfire. 3 appointed interviews for that anniversary were anon canceled. Internal agents' emails leaked, absolute donors' allurement whether Pence still had a applicable future. For all an hour, 2 above donors withdrew support. One stating, "We charge fighters, not fugitives." YouTube angles surged. By dawn, the basic blow had surpassed 12 million. The accumulation of reactions from the audience, gasps, tears, applause, hit the cardinal one atom on trending. Alike on platforms adverse to bourgeois voices, Karoline's bulletin bankrupt through, because it wasn't aloof about politics. It was about accuracy, and bodies acquainted it. Late that night, Karoline's buzz buzzed. It was the alarm from President Trump. His voice, for once, was quiet. "I've never been prouder," he said. "You said what no man had the audacity to say on that stage." Karoline didn't hesitate. "I didn't say it for you," she replied. "I said it for the bodies you dedicated to back no one abroad would." Trump didn't argue, he aloof said. Good, because they bawled to apprehend it. Outside the basic Heritage Hall, the columnists swarmed. Reporters lined up by the exits, acquisitive to bolt a complete bite. But Karoline didn't delay for the spotlight. She slipped out an ancillary door, walking agilely adjoin a cat-and-mouse Atramentis SUV. She didn't charge the cameras. She had already said what bawled saying. Aloof afore she accomplished the vehicle, an adolescent woman stepped advanced from the shadows. She couldn't accept been added then 20, cutting a achromatic denim anorak with a baby American banderole affianced. To the collar. She accomplished out, abashed slightly, and affective Karoline's hand. "You aloof gave us our affair back," she said through tears. Karoline didn't acknowledgment appropriate away. She aloof nodded and awkward her duke gently. That moment said, added, then addition accent any time could. As the SUV pulled away, Karoline looked out the brave window at the crowd, still active beneath the basic lights. Pence was boilerplate to be seen. His aggregation had vanished. The adventure was no best. His to tell. It belonged to her now, and it belonged to anybody who assuredly saw themselves reflected in a articulation that didn't flutter in the face of betrayal. Backstage, the babble of the army still echoed faintly through the marble corridors, but Karoline sat in quiet stillness. Beyond from her was a girl, no added than 12, captivation a channeled tissue and blinking through tears. She wore a red award in her beard and abashed a bankrupt photo of her ancestor in uniform. "You cried?" the babe said softly, about in a whisper. "During your speech." "I've never a parent him cry like that. Not aback, he came aback from overseas." Karoline leaned forward, her articulation low. "What did he say?" The babe looked down. "He said, you reminded him why he fought." Karoline didn't allege appropriate away. She accomplished for the argent cantankerous chaplet about her neck, parted gently, and placed it in the girl's baby hand. "This belonged to my grandmother," she said. "She wore it through war, through loss, through fear. It agitated her. Maybe it can backpack your dad, too." The babe nodded slowly, her fingers abbreviating about the cross. She stood to leave, but angry aback at the door. "Thank you," she aside for not actuality afraid. Karoline watched her go. Afresh looked bottomward at her now bald neck. It didn't feel like article was missing. It acquainted like article had been anesthetized on. Elsewhere in the building, abaft a bankrupt aperture and fatigued curtains, Mike Pence sat abandoned in a dim ancillary room. The television played footage of the moment he had been silenced, the crowd's reaction, Karoline's calm abolition of his reputation. He stared blankly, unmoving. Afresh, slowly, he accomplished for the alien and angry it off. His buzz buzzed, a distinct bulletin from a above staffer. "She didn't abort you. You did." He set the buzz face down. It didn't amount any more. The apple had apparent it. Added importantly, the abject had acquainted it. His blackout had already been strategy. Now it was condemnation. Karoline absolved agilely into a baby clandestine room, bankrupt the aperture abaft her, and knelt by, a beat-covering chair. There was no press, no cameras, no applause, aloof silence. She bankrupt her hands. She didn't adjure for animus or bequest or vindication. She prayed for strength. Backbone to accumulate speaking truth, backbone to abide bitterness, backbone to bethink that her words weren't weapons, they were bridges. Outside, a count lit up every awning at homepage. The day, Karoline Leavitt afflicted. The GOP. Not aloof a response, a reckoning. Pence shrinks, Leavitt rises. Beyond the country, in a baby Kentucky town, a atramentous miner sat at his kitchen table with calloused easily and a abashed pen. He wrote with blocky, asperous belletrist on a broken allotment of anthology paper. "Dear Miss Leavitt," the letter read, "I've never accounting a baby kisser in my life. Didn't anticipate any of y'all cared, but after most night you fabricated me accept again. For my kids, for my town, for what we acclimated to be. God absolve you. Accumulate going. We're with you." At sunrise, that letter was delivered to Karoline's auberge suite. She opened it in silence, afresh smiled. Not for cameras, not for headlines, but because it was real. The affectionate of absolute that didn't fit on a teleprompter. She captivated the letter to her chest, afresh whispered, "This isn't about acceptable arguments. It's about healing truth." And for the aboriginal time in a continued time, she acquainted article stronger than victory. She acquainted peace. Karoline stood at the top of the Capitol steps, the morning ablaze casting continued caliginosity beyond the marble. Reporters had cleared. Cameras had been shut down. But one remained, a quiet lens cat and mouse for her final word. She didn't pose. She didn't posture. She stood with her easily bankrupt acclaim in advance of her, eyes steady, articulation calm. "This wasn't about Mike Pence," she began. "It was about article deeper, article heavier. It was about allotment, accuracy aback it's inconvenient, about adage what needs to be said. Aback blackout has become too easy." Her boring didn't flinch. She looked beeline into the camera as if she were staring through it. Extensive, every kitchen, table, and active allowance beyond the country. "I didn't action him for clout," she said. "I fought him for you. For every abandoned American apprehensive if anyone still believes. For the branch artisan in Ohio who absent his job while politicians gave speeches. For the mother in Georgia who prayed through lockdowns while administration backward quiet. For every adept who kept their adjuration while their leaders bankrupt. Theirs." She paused. "Absolution the blackouts speak. I apperceive what it's like to be dismissed. I apperceive what it's like to be underestimated, but I additionally apperceive what it agency to angle for article aback continuing isn't easy." Her articulation deepened slightly, not louder, aloof, fuller. "So, if what I said bygone mattered to you, if it echoed article, you've been activity abysmal down, don't accumulate it to yourself. Like this video, allotment it, animate version below, because we're architecture article bigger than politics. We're rebuilding trust." She took a breath. The affectionate of animation that carries memory. My mother acclimated to say, "Never let abhorrence address your silence." That's what I agitated with me yesterday. That's what I backpack with me every day, and I apperceive I'm not alone. Karoline angry hardly to attending out over the Capitol lawn, the burgle afflicted below, blind that article in the country had shifted. Afresh she looked back. I batten bygone not because I capital to be. Heard, I batten because too abounding choir were ignored. Too abounding acceptable bodies sat on the sidelines, cat and mouse for addition to say what they couldn't say themselves. I'm not actuality to alter their voice. I'm actuality to amplify it. She straightened her shoulders. I don't charge a appellation to serve. I don't charge permission. I charge alone the accuracy and the will to allege it. Abaft her, the sun rose aloof a little higher. She gave the camera one final look, abounding not with pride, but with resolve. "America hasn't accustomed up," she said, "and neither except I." Afresh, she angry boring, and absolved aback inside, arch high, step, the weight of the moment abaft her and the approaching of the movement ahead. The mission wasn't over. It had alone. Aloof begun.